Hello, good evening, everybody. So, tonight's topic is one which is coming up on the national news recently a little bit as some of our people nationally have passed away, most notably the former First Lady, Barbara Bush. In my own life recently, I had a friend pass away this last week. And I thought that it might be a nice space to spend a few moments and just talk about some things related to life, death, the grieving process, and things that can be done to help going through this process. So there's not a single person in the world that is untouched by the death of somebody close to them, or by family or friends or other people that they care about over the course of a lifetime. And of course, at some point, we have to look at our own mortality, as it were. And when a person who's close passes away, then it very quickly makes life's priorities seem a little bit more clear, just for a time at least. People come close to their loved ones, people celebrate or mourn or come together in all sorts of different fashions, depending on the culture, depending on the circumstances and the time. And in grieving as a community, it helps, I think, to have people come together and to work through these in such a way. Things such as going to funerals, such as holding prayers together if that's something that you're drawn towards. But most importantly, going through the different phases of grief, it is important to realize and to remember that no single person goes through it in the same way. Some people start off, it's very common with a very initial shock that goes through, disbelief. Can't believe this has happened or is happening. And after a little bit, the shock tends to settle in with an awareness. Sometimes there's an intense pain, anger can come up. And afterwards there's different stages of feeling down, depressed, lonely, all sorts of different kinds of emotions can bubble up and resolve, even in the space of several hours perhaps. And sometimes if somebody starts to feel a little bit of joy sometime later, sometimes that can be matched with a guilt, for example, of, oh no, I shouldn't have felt happy. I've just lost my friend or spouse or mother or father or sister or brother, or somebody close in any which way. And so having an openness to know what comes and to be able to accept and hold it in that space of letting the emotions come, but also letting them fall back to where they came. And there's definitely some process that goes along with it. And having the awareness to be able to also reach out to others at that same time could be very, very helpful in getting through a loss more easily. It's one of the things that people sometimes will say is, oh, I know how you feel, or I know what's going on. And in all of my studies or reading, they talk about how sometimes if someone comes along and says, oh, I know just how you feel, it almost is perceived as insulting sometimes, because how could you possibly know what's going on in another's heart the person thinks or says. And so one of the key phrases that is offered is often, "I can't imagine what you must be going through right now." Another thing that can be helpful for being supportive of a family that's grieving, or somebody that you know that is going through that, is being aware that just simply taking some time to be with the person, they don't necessarily have to say anything or be entertainment, but just simply the presence of another person, where possible, to be present and with and sharing in this space. Sometimes people give this promise, just let me know if I need anything, if I can do anything for you. And usually it's received with a thank you of some sort, of course. A nicer thing, maybe, as an idea, is not only giving those offers, but thinking, what is it that somebody might need in this time? Do they need some help with their lawn mowing? Do they need a little extra food? For example, I've known of one family that when they were grieving the loss of a vital member, the neighbor or friend basically just came over with some pre-made food that was frozen, that was put into the freezer, so that all the person had to do was to take it and to put it in the oven, and they had a homemade meal kind of thing. Now, of course, this sort of thing is always best done if you're somebody that actually knows what the other person has a need for, because, of course, if 10 people do the same thing, next thing you know, the freezer's overflowing and you don't have, you've got too much. So coming up with an offer of something, of course, I would always recommend asking, hey, I'd like to do this for you, is this okay? And being able to help out in that sense. So, sorry, I have a friend suggesting things I can do. Anyway, so it is important, though, to just hold each other close, and to be able to at the same time be able to respect the space and the boundaries. So it's, again, one of those topics that we all go through in life, here and there. In clinic, it's fairly common that I have a patient who comes to me in a state of grieving after they've lost a loved one. And I love that suggestion, Deepti. She says, I usually send out a coupon to get cleaning with my cleaning crew. It's a beautiful way of doing it. So they know exactly what they can have. But yeah, so the basics. So when people are especially in that first stage of that shock, that initial disbelief stage, it can sometimes feel very difficult to take actions, and particularly to take actions that are important to taking care of yourself in the long run. Things like exercise, things like good nutritious foods, remembering to get some sleep, and the sleep that comes oftentimes in the initial throes can be restless, especially if there's regrets or things that are present in that time. And that's why, especially being gentle with yourself and being able to reach out to others. If sometimes I've had people that didn't have anybody around that was close that they could reach out to, and in those cases, especially people such as the grieving counselors can be particularly helpful. in those cases as well. But actually almost for anybody, come to think of it, just because these people are very good at helping folks move through the transitions of life, as it were. So in my time before I went to medical school, I spent a little bit of time in hospice work, actually, and it was a beautiful time, actually. Got to meet some lovely people and to help as a volunteer to be able to take them, or not really take them, but watch them as they move through the stages, because not only was the family grieving and in need of extra support, sometimes just simply having a family member or a hospice volunteer being able to sit with grandmother, for example, for a few hours enabled the family to be able to go out and the caretakers to be able to take care of themselves a little bit, and not feel guilty as though they left their loved one alone for a short while. But yes, and it was also vitally good to know a sense of how people deal with loss in such different ways. Family dynamics, you learn when you see in the hospital. One family will approach a situation very intensely, and another family might be very standoffish. And sometimes it can be easy to look at this situation and think, oh my goodness, these people really care and these people really don't. Not everybody expresses themselves in the same way. And it is one of those things that it's good to know about a little bit, the different styles of ways in which people can communicate, because when you get to the moment of having to reckon with a life that is without the person that was there previously, being able to move through these stages without feeling judged by the community in which they live is, I think, an important part. And it's an important part of what we see in the hospital too, just from flipping back over to the doctor's side of things a little bit. So anyway, so it's one of those things that I just wanted to carve a little space out for on a Monday night and say a few words anyway. So I thank you all for joining me tonight, and take care.